This is Heroes for Sale 53, or is it? Or is it the reboot? Heroes for Sale. I don't even know if this is, can we call it, is it conical? So we've got the real boss of Heroes for Sale, Sue, with us. Stu's too busy with Comic Hub at the moment. How you doing, Sue? Welcome to the pod.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to call it number one pod.
Okay, number one.
This is the first one.
Is this canon? Can we say that?
It's not canon.
Okay.
We're branching out of canon.
We're creating. This is the beginning of the Heroes for Sale multiverse.
Well, that's what you get when Stu does other work.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's get stuck into it. We've got plenty to get through. We've got 4 new comics, and we've got a What Do You Mean You Haven't Read This as well, which is spectacular, by the way, so make sure you hang around to the end for that. But DC, they have been busy. There is always a lot of Bat, but this is more than just Bat. This is Universal DC, Night Terrors. It is centered around Batman, though, Sue, and we're going to do a couple of Night Terrors here, aren't we? Like a one-shot, which has got everybody in it, and one which is Batman-centric.
Yeah, so if anybody is listening to this and they haven't caught up on what's happening, in the DC comics for 2 months, across all the titles, the issues for 2 months were going to be replaced with a Night Terrors issue. So your normal standard comic series just kind of goes on a little hiatus for 2 months. And it's across the whole DC universe, but you don't have to collect them all. They've done it really well so that you can just, if you get Batman, you can just get the 2 Batman issues back to back. And I kind of was going to go with that for myself, but I read Night Terrors First Blood, which is that first one shot, which we're looking at tonight, right, Ricardo? That and Night Terrors Batman. And I think that one shot, and then another one that came out last week, which we're not reviewing, but it's the first of the 4-part miniseries, which is the Night Terrors miniseries. That miniseries, this one shot, and then whoever you follow in DC will do you well. I'm really enjoying it, more than I thought I was going to. Any of you long-term comic readers, if you were around when they launched Convergence, you would have been a bit nervous about this one. And I've probably just stepped on a whole lot of people's toes there. Ricardo, did you read Convergence?
I didn't read Convergence. No. I mean, I tend to pick and choose. I pick things. I pick sort of short story runs rather than get every Batman or every Superman or whatever, So I never did read Convergence, but it sounds like I did myself a favor. Did I dodge a bullet?
Well, okay, having said that, I have got customers who absolutely loved Convergence, but the general feeling was they wrote it so that it could just be go like this event through DC so that they could move offices. So it was all this pre-planned out of canon stuff. And then they didn't actually move office, but they still did. Well, they still launched it. It was just horrible. So going into Night Terrors, I was worried, but I really enjoyed it. How did you feel about it, Ricardo?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it as well. I wasn't sure what to expect, but they've got a couple of great artists involved. I mean, we're talking both here. I mean, Night Terrors Batman is Gilliam March, and who is it? Howard Porter doing the Night Terrors First Blood. The artwork in these is absolutely superb, and I really like where they've gone with it because, I mean, the Batman origin story has been told so many times, right? But they're not retelling it, but they're looking back at it and treating it in a different way, and they're treating it in a really interesting way. In a way, the thing that has made Bruce Wayne Batman, it's what's in his nightmares, it's what has haunted him and driven him to become what he is today.
So I guess I should explain for people who haven't even looked into Night Terrors yet. What it is basically every single superhero is locked inside their own nightmare, and inside that nightmare, there's a new villain called Insomnia, and he's traveling through all the Soup's nightmares to try and find the Nightmare Stone, which he's lost. So in the core 4-part series of Night Terrors, that's going to be basically the new Insomnia villain just going through it all. But he is appearing in each of the Soup's nightmares. And I really liked the Batman one because I'm so sick of that origin stuff with the mother's pearls splitting and Crime Alley and, and the death of the parents and all that. And it's a trope that we know. It's in all the origin stories of Batman. It's what defined who he is and why he's the way he is. but they just did it a little bit differently in this, and it didn't feel like a rehash.
Yeah, it felt like they treated it completely differently, and they're looking back on it, but through the lens of the haunting that is Batman. You know, I think that's great, and it does have a feel too. And I don't try not to give away too many spoilers here, but Deadman is in this, right? I mean, he's effectively really the hero, if you like, but it has a real Neil Gaiman feel. This has got a real Sandman universe feel.
Yes. Well, and I mean, Deadman wasn't, some of the characters through Night Terrors as we go on have been in Sandman. Yeah, what I really enjoyed about the Batman one, well, I enjoyed Deadman in the standalone, but what I really loved about the Batman one was the fact that they actually gave him the intelligence that we've been told he has, if you get what I mean. Like, we know he's clever, we know he's smart, he's a detective and all the rest of it. But in this one, he was going inside his own mind, and they gave that idea of his genius a little bit more depth. Did you get that, or no?
Yeah, no, I did. I mean, he had some sort of immersion tank that Alfred was helping him with, right? He was sort of trying to explore his own nightmares, explore his own head, and try and figure out what was going on. And yeah, I really like that idea. It was a little bit Matrixy kind of, how that was happening as well. So you're right, because too often it's easy to dumb down Batman and just go, let's have him beat up a bunch of bad guys and be, Punisher without the guns. But this kind of played in more, like you said, into that original detective idea of this guy's super smart, super clever, he's a tech genius.
And and he's built a fortress in his mind. We've been told that from the beginning when he was with the League of Assassins and all of that. This all kind of canon stuff coming through. But then he's so fallible, and there's so many stories where you just think, oh, you're smarter than that. And
does he remind you a lot of Stu in that way? Am I allowed to say that?
Oh my God, you're going to get me into trouble. It's bad enough I took over. It's bad enough I took. Yeah. Clever fortressed mind. That is Stu. Yes, maybe he is Batman. I haven't seen him and Batman in the same room.
Well, there you go. People hit Reddit. Let's find out.
I'm excited by that because DC have just relaunched. So they've gone from like New 52 and then Rebirth, and now they've relaunched into the Dawn of DC. And if this is their first kind of event that they're going to launch with, I'm really excited by it. I like what Joshua Williamson's done. I really do. And
well, that's the thing. I mean, I mentioned there's two different artists, but it is the same writer all the way through, isn't it? It's Joshua Williamson.
Yeah, like he's coordinated the whole thing. And like you were talking about, so Deadman's in the one shot, Night Terror's First Blood, which is the one shot that Ricardo and I have read. And Deadman is kind of breaking the fourth wall a little bit and leading us through the story, and is, I felt, just the perfect, I don't know, I'd call him a smaller character to kind of ease you into it, because a lot of people won't have a preconceived idea of how he should behave or what he should say or whether he has the right to be in this role, because he's a bit of a, would you say he's a bit of a smaller, have you read much Deadman?
No, none. No, up until this. So, but I think why he is the key character in that one shot, it makes complete sense.
Yeah,
I think it does. It really does make sense. And I mean, I hope down the track, and maybe this is part of it, that it relaunches him and we see a bit more of him, because him and Insomnia going head to head.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what it baits a little bit, is like, what you want to see.
John D, Dr. Destiny, I mean, he had a major role in this one shot, a major role. And what they did to him, how do you do this, you and Stu, without spoiling it? I felt like what they did to him, because Dr. Destiny's role in DC Universe is he can manipulate anyone's dreams, right?
Mm.
So I knew there was a new villain being brought into it, but I kind of thought that they were just going to kind of use him as a trope. And what they did to him in this one shot, oh my God, if you're going to read any of the Night Terrors crossovers, or even if you're just reading your title, get that First Blood one shot.
Yeah, it ties everything together really well. Not only that, but I'll say it again, Howard Porter's artwork, and it is just so good, so good. Those opening panes, all the oranges and yellows, and golds and things. It's just absolutely beautiful. And then the way it all falls apart, it's just the next page over. It really captured beautifully how a dream can go to shit, if you like. That whole setup for a nightmare to start. It's superbly done. I was really, really impressed with Night Terror's First Blood, the one shot. I thought that was excellent. And the Batman Night Terrors, again, very, very good. And as we said, goes back to the making of Bruce Wayne, but not just Bruce Wayne. It's there's the family, everything goes through there, and there's even a little bit of I think, would you call it a little bit of an Indiana Jones homage? The pearls turn into massive things. He's having to run away from them. Very dreamlike, very, really well done. That it's turned it into something like that.
I did not get that, Ricardo. That's so cool. I'm going to go back and have a look at that. I loved the... yeah, okay, yeah, cool. Another dimension. I loved the little Robin story at the end, too.
Yes. Yeah, to tie it all back in, because, Robin is a very, very much a big part of this story for Batman.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought it was really exciting to have... Yeah, Stella.
Get amongst it. It is superb. And there is, once again, I say there is some fantastic artwork. I actually thought for a moment, without giving anything away, that we were going to get Man-Bat.
That
creature that gets birthed. I thought, hang on, is this what's going on? But no.
Yeah. Did you see the Joker's Night Terror's first issue that came out?
I haven't seen that yet. No.
It's not used in an office.
It's 9 to 5.
That's really good. Yeah, okay, so Batman Night Terrors and the Night Terrors First Blood one shot I thought were brilliant, and then the first issue of the 4-part series is out as well, just Night Terrors. Yeah, I'm jumping onto it. I was really impressed.
Yeah, grab it. It is Batman-centric, but the one-shot isn't, obviously. It's Deadman. There's a lot of characters in it. If you love great storytelling, if you like Neil Gaiman, if you're a fan of Sandman, let me spit that out, I think you'll enjoy it. I think it's definitely worth a grab, and it's just a different Batman, which is kind of cool too.
It's a smart one.
It's a smart Batman.
It's a
Stu Batman. That's right. Bruce Colson. There we go.
You're going to let me do another part.
Is it Bruce Colson or Stu Wayne? Which way are we going? All good. All right, let's move on. Now, this is James Tynion IV is one of my favourite creators, one of my favourite writers. He does some absolutely superb stuff. Generally, quite horrible, lots of blood and people dying everywhere. This, though, is a little different. It's still got a supernatural sort of feel to it, but it is quite a different comic and quite a different story, Sue.
Yeah, so... Tynion is, if you're not keeping up with the writers that you're reading, is Nice House on the Lake, Something's Killing the Children, House of Slaughter, and Department of Truth.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah, and so I have got a lot of customers following Tynion as a writer now, and his name is on this. It is, I think there should be a disclaimer, and I think that Brumble's name should have been Tate Brumble should have actually had just his name. This is Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos. Is Tynion's idea that he had floating around in his head and has never had time to write. So he has teamed up with Tate Brumble, who he also worked on House of Slaughter with. I think it was House of Slaughter. And he's doing the writing. Having said that, Tynion was heavily involved with Isaac Goddard in the character definition and the look of the character and in the feel of what the script was going to be. He just hasn't written it.
I thought, like I said, it does have a different tone to it to some of other Tynion stuff, right? It is different for him. And that probably explains a lot of why that is. But it is a clever idea. Again, he's taken it somewhere different. Department of Truth for me is the best thing he's done. It's the best thing of his that I've read, I should say, that he's written, I think. But this goes somewhere else. I think and I don't want to just reference other shit for the sake of reference other shit, but I think if you're an Umbrella Academy fan, it's kind of got more of that sort of vibe than a traditional Tynion story.
Yeah, actually, I'd agree with you on that. He's definitely got otherworldly powers and abilities that he's been uncomfortable with for his entire life. He's been left on his own to deal with that, basically, and has no idea what's going on with him. Mathematical equation solving genius who's just an outcast, outsider. And I think the breaking of the fourth wall and narrating his story, I don't normally like that. It works in Deadpool for me and in funnier kind of stories, but it did work in this, I thought. Did you feel okay with that?
Yeah, I did feel okay with that, because I mean, there's obviously, the way this comic starts, you need the backstory, because otherwise you're like, what the fuck is going on? Why is he talking to a pigeon? Things like that. But so I think it needs it. It's in terms of as a mechanic to get you up to speed with what's going on, because they're dropping you effectively in the middle of a story. So they need to catch you up. And I think they do that really, really well.
And I like the idea, like he says in the early pages, I've known all my life I was different. And he's setting himself up. I think it appeals to the ego in a lot of us. We feel different. We want to be special. We want to be different. And this guy's different in ways that I wouldn't want to be, actually. But it also feels like the whole town, it had a small town feel.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of, I feel like they know him, because when he was doing some equation working, how shall I say it, in his garage, there was the noise and the lights and everything that were going on had attracted the city folk. It felt like the neighborhood had come to see what amazing thing he might have done, and then he didn't.
Yeah, it was like, what's he done this time? So it's like, these gatherings aren't unusual. There's weird noises coming from his garage, and they all know that something amazing is going to happen.
Yeah,
generally.
But
it doesn't.
As he burns the place down.
Yeah.
I love the stylized art too. I think you're right. It does. I hadn't put that together, but it does feel a little bit Umbrella Academy-ish.
It's a one man rather than a troupe, but it's kind of got that vibe, that kind of feel. Yeah. So the oddly pedestrian life of Christopher Chaos. It's quirky. It's different. It's an original story. Tynion's birthed this, obviously, and Bromble is writing it as script. He's down as the script writer. Yeah. Script by Tate Bromble, based on an idea by James Tynion IV. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
I feel like it's going to be a bigger, wider kind of world with there's a lot of supernatural stuff going on outside of him as well. I'm excited to see where that goes.
And I think this could also attract younger readers too. I think it's kind of, sort of, maybe it's not aimed at me, but I think because of who the character is and where they are at their stage in life, it is probably aimed young adults. I think it's kind of aimed there, but I don't like putting YA on things because people think, oh, it's boring if you put YA on stuff, but it's not. It's clever.
The best stuff is YA. I mean, the Kimmy Garcia Titan stuff's just brilliant. But the other thing with this is I don't like when Nice House on the Lake came out, that first issue, I would have thought that was young adult as well, but that turned into something very not young adult.
Well, maybe that's what he's got waiting for us. Who knows?
I don't know, but I like his style.
Definitely one to follow. I think this, and it's I don't know what you would call this art style. You mentioned it before. I don't even know how to reference it, but there are those pictures that you see from from that stylized the look 1950s, and it's usually a woman who's just kind of over what's going on, and she's always got a sort of hand to her forehead, and it's all like, oh my god, another one of these. It's kind of got that look to it, those pictures that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know what those are called. I don't know how to reference them.
I've got no idea how to reference this as an art. It's very comic, as in, I don't know. I don't know what you would call it. It's just kind of modern comic art style, but it's definitely got the bright, yes.
I mean, as Stu and I often say, showing each other pictures on a podcast is great, but because it is bright. The character wears a lot of pink and yellow, and his hair's blue and stuff. But there's a scene in it where something gets torn to pieces, and there's just one whole page of intestines and things everywhere, and it's absolutely superbly drawn. So that is pretty cool. That's after me saying in James Tynion and stuff, normally there's blood everywhere, but not this time. Well, actually.
I forgot about that scene.
Yeah, I forgot about that scene. But this is through Dark Horse, and a lot of Tynion stuff tends to be through Image or Boom.
Yeah, they get big, they get wanted everywhere, don't they?
The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos, definitely one to check out. All right, let's move on, because we do have 4 books to get through tonight before we get to What Do You Mean? Void Rivals, written by one Robert Kirkman, who you may know like zombies a bit.
Yeah, so Robert Kirkman is one of my all-time favorites. He did Walking Dead, and he did Invincible, and he did Super Dinosaur, and he's worked on other like superhero stuff. He's incredible. He picks a genre, and he just seems to nail exactly what's needed in that genre. And he has done Void Rivals. So this is a sci-fi epic, and it's from Image, but what he's doing is he's going to create this universe, sci-fi universe, and in that universe are going to be Transformers and G.I. Joe operatives. And this first issue I thought was just so much fun. Oh, it was brilliant. It's setting up the actual intergalactic idea of what's going on. 2 planets are about to be sucked into a black hole, and those planets are at war, and these 2 people, just one from each planet, fighting each other, crash land on this planet that the story's on. And I loved it. I don't know, it was really... Did you enjoy it, or are you not looking at this one?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I wasn't a massive fan of the artwork, I've got to say. I mean, it was okay, but it didn't blow me away. And like, it was functional, I thought, but I wasn't like, wow, look at that panel. But as you say, what it sets up and how it sets it up is very, very cool, because you got these 2 people. It's the old desert island trope, right? You got 2 people thrown together, and it's like, you might hate each other, and your 2 countries are at war, or 2 planets are at war, but you're both going to die unless you work together and try and get yourselves off this thing.
Yeah.
And they slowly realize they've got more in common than they do in different, I guess, which is the whole moral, if you like, of this story.
Yeah. And okay, so I like the idea of Transformers and G.I. Joe in a sci-fi setting where it's a fleshed out kind of background to the setting. I think Robert Kirkman's going to do that really well. But I like that it's not going to be a Transformers or a G.I. Joe, that they're going to be a part of a plotline but not overshadow the story.
Yeah, which is going to be interesting to see how he handles that, because I mean, like I've said before, I'm not a massive Transformers fan, so I don't know a lot about it, but I know that Optimus Prime is basically some mechanical god, right? So he is completely overpowered. So how do you deal and keep a story going when you've got beings that are so OP like that?
Yeah, well, but he is fallible.
Well, I guess everybody's fallible, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah, and I liked that Optimus wasn't the one that turned out. And that Transformers, there to protect humanity and work with us and all the rest of it, if you believe all the movies. But actually, they might not be. I don't know.
Yeah, they might not be as altruistic as they seem.
Yeah, and I like the idea of that.
And that's, I think, what Kirkman's done well in the past, right, is that there is no black and white. It's all just different shades of grey. So is he going to, the knight in shining armour, the Transformers that so many know and love, going to be found out a bit and not going to be everything that you think they are?
Yeah, and I just don't get how the G.I. Joe's going to come into this, but that gives me hope for humanity, that we might have like some secret military G.I. Joe force that gets us out into space fighting Transformers or with Transformers. I don't know. I liked it.
What are the other ones? Decepticons. The other ones are Decepticons, aren't they? Yes.
So I think I told you I went and saw the new Transformers movie, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they are doing this in the movie world. So that excited me, because so often things are happening in the movie world and they're not happening in the comics, and I get people coming in wanting that. And I think I'm going to be able to answer that with Void Rivals. Yeah,
and now you mentioned something too from the movie, because I haven't seen the Transformers movie since I think the second one, because I just find them a little bit...
Don't.
Yeah, personally.
They are exactly what they need to be.
Okay, good. I just don't need them. That's what it is. I just don't need them, right? So I haven't seen one for a while, but you've seen the latest one, and what happens at the end?
Yeah, so is this going to spoil it for everybody?
Well, I mean, okay, spoiler alert. If you're going to go see a Transformers movie and you haven't yet, spoiler alert. But I think this doesn't really spoil the story, but it sets up what you're talking about.
Well, you've got the okay, if I'm being honest, Ricardo, the latest Transformers movie was just a pile of rubbish. But I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it because it was my Transformers, and I don't care what happens. But they just do the same old trope, teenager finds Transformer, has to help Transformer, the government's involved, blah blah blah. Anyway, at the end of the Transformer movie, this is a big spoiler. They've been through everything. The whole movie's over, and the kid's in an interrogation room, and some guy comes in, and I can't say who he is, comes in and sits down and says, we really want you and your mates, your tin mates, to help us out. And if you're interested, here's my card, and it's a G.I. Joe card. And I'm like, yes, they're doing it. Kirkman's got them doing it in the movies.
Yeah, that's it. And when you told me that, I was like, oh, okay. Because after that point, I was like, yeah, Transformers, whatever. But
I don't know who'll go and see a second Transformers movie from that lot. Good God, that was bad. But it was my Transformers, so I don't care.
So you'll go to the next one, regardless.
It's like one of my customers has been buying Wonder Woman forever and ever, and insists on still buying Wonder Woman comics. Yeah, Wonder Woman comics are great. It's just that she's evolved into not my Wonder Woman, so I don't read Wonder Woman anymore. I shouldn't really say that, should I? And I said to him, how can you still buy Wonder Woman comics when that's what they've done to her? And he turned around and he said, I buy it so they keep writing them, and eventually they'll do her different origin, and I'll get Wonder Woman back. And I was very humbled by that. So I'm applying that to Transformers movies.
Fair enough. So Void Rivals by Robert Kirkman. Get on board now, because it is kickstarting a massive universe that's going to involve the G.I. Joes, the Transformers, and some other worlds that we are just getting introduced to in Void Rivals. So check that out. There you go. Those are our 4 new books, and it is time to get to what we like to call, Sue, is, what do you mean you haven't read that?
Well, this is quite a new one, so I don't know that we can call it that, except that. What do you mean you didn't read that?
Oh, sorry, this is number 1. It's the reboot, so we're probably scrapping. What do you mean you haven't read that? Sue's got another idea.
No, but it's like, it was the comic that when it was coming out monthly, I had non-comic readers who I'd never seen before racing in to get the hard copy of this. I had our regulars just racing in to get it. It was like saga. It was anybody who knew about it was here the day it was released. So I guess you can say, what do you mean you haven't read it? And now you've got to do it in graphic novel form as opposed to single issue.
Yeah, so I mean, it is reasonably new. So you probably maybe not blamed for if you haven't read it, but you should definitely check it out, Sue. It is called Starhenge. It's book 1, The Dragon and the Boar by Liam Sharp, and really, really clever. Really clever. I'm not a big one for reading plugs off the back of this, but I thought this was quite cool. It's the Terminator meets the Green Knight in an enthralling epic, setting the scene for an original saga inspired by Arthurian legends.
I loved it from the minute. Okay, so but the other way of explaining it, I think it was on the back, is that a future Merlin travels back in time to stop time-traveling robots going back in time and stealing the world's magic. I mean, what an idea! Fantasy.
And the artwork in it is superb, and the artwork changes all the time, right?
Isn't he clever? So it's Liam Sharp, and he is another one of those guys who cut his teeth at 2000 AD. And all the writers and artists who go through there, it's just magical, the world building that's in those images. And you're right, and there's 3 different distinct art styles that he's used the story to showcase as well, which I just thought were brilliant. But the main art style, did you pick that up and open that and think this is going to be a really dreary, hard to read, somber story?
Because it's really dark. There's lots of purples, lots of blacks and dark blues and things like that. And you're like, oh man, this is, it's almost Geiger-esque. In the sort of the first part, and you're like, oh wow. So yeah, I was like, when Stu actually gave me this to read, he goes, read this, it's brilliant. And I picked and I started, I was like, oh Christ, how long is this going to take me to read? Because this looks really heavy. And it is, but it is for a little bit, but then it introduces other elements, and the story actually takes you places you don't expect it to go, which is I think, which is brilliant. And there are times in this, it goes from Geiger to almost Frazetta style in some of the artwork. And then you have...
It's like Ben Templesmith or Dave McKean.
Yes. And then, all of a sudden, I flipped a page because I got to the end of what must have been one part of the story arc. And the next part of the story arc starts, and you've got this, which looks like 1980s comic panels, and it's like, oh, wow, cool.
So what
Ricardo's
just held up there is the story is narrated by Amber, who is like a modern day witch who becomes part of the time traveling story arc. So she's narrating what's going on and how things are happening. And then she's telling a little bit of a story about herself. But to do that, he flips into this completely different art style, like a 1960s comic.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
It's so clever. Like it's not, I was going to say it's not often, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen often that I actually turn a page and go, didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And it wasn't to do with the story. It was just, boom, it popped this different art style. And I'm like, okay, what's happened here? What's going on? I was just like, drew me right back in again.
Yeah. And so I think the narration of Amber throughout the story meant that, like, the fourth wall breaking, and it's a colloquial kind of language being used as she's just kind of adding in this lightness to it, it worked so well, but it was not what I expected from the art at all. Not what I expected. And especially because the opening pages were quoting Geoffrey of Monmouth, the 11th century monk who actually did create the writings around the Arthurian villain.
Yeah, because he wrote, what was it called, The Kings of Britain or something, the history of the Kings of Britain or something like that. And that's where the Arthurian legend comes from. And so it starts by, like you say, quoting that, and you're like, whoa, okay, what's going on here? Heavy. And like, that stuff you really have to read.
I went down a little dark tunnel trying to read some of his writings that had been, because he wrote them in Latin, so of course I'm not going to be able to read that. But all I can liken the early translations to, which I just had to give up on, was I studied Chaucer at university, and that's like, and it's supposed to be English, but it's like a completely another language, and that's kind of what you get from the early kind of translations. I couldn't make head or tail of it, but he's in, like, you've talked about Kieran Gillen with Die and Once and Future, and that Arthurian myth and everything, and he's another one that's just so totally into all mythology. And Liam Sharp actually retraced Merlin's footsteps and read everything and anything he could on Merlin and King Arthur and everything, and he went to all the places in the book and just had this little kind of road trip around it. And I just thought I'd love to do that.
Yeah, how clever, eh? How good. And you talked about some of the language in it as well, but then there's very much that light and shade, because you get that the heavy take. And Amber's got a boyfriend from America who turns up, and earlier in the story, she's showing him some pictures, and she's drawn, I don't know if you ever watched the old Robin Hood series from TV back in the 80s, and they called him Herne the Hunter, the horned god. She's drawn that because she's like into Wicca and all that.
She's remembering past lives and imagery and everything, but how is she?
Yeah. How is that happening? And how is she? How aware of that happening is she? But then the American boyfriend turns up again and sees that picture again, and they've just obviously been in bed together, and he looks at it and he goes, "Oh, the horny guy." And she rips out the old "takes one to know one," and so there's that kind of level of now language and humor and things in as well.
Yeah, But also the other thing that I loved running through this was the idea that AI would want to exterminate and get rid of humanity, and that they could travel back through timelines to do that. But the thing that was stopping them was magic. And they didn't understand it. They couldn't compute it. And so they had to go back and make sure that all the knights that protected magic through the timelines didn't exist. And then somehow deal with magic at its origin point. And I love that, because me and Stu continually argue and fight about whether it's science fiction or whether it's fantasy that's the best, because he says, oh, if you've got magic, then you just wave your wand. But it's not quite like that. But I'd like to think I could overcome his AI sci-fi.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wonder if this is what the Screenwriters Guild are talking about. Maybe that's what Liam's talking about. Maybe this is a dig. This is a dig at Hollywood wanting to use AI scripts and AI artwork. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Liam Sharp maybe being political on it, but no, it's a very good read. Starhenge is what it's called. And
did you like? Can we just say it might be a little bit, but the way that Merlin's name came around.
Oh yes, tell that story.
So good. Well, because his mum down the centuries and eons in the future had to somehow make magic, and the knights protecting the magic happened, but they'd been wiped out in the timelines. So she sends her son back in time. The creation of his name was, she said, he would be called Mer, to swim the tides of time, and Lynn, to cease the assault on the filigree of order. And I just love that. I'm never going to be able to read another comic or book about Merlin and not think that that's the origin of his name.
Yeah, it's really clever. It's great writing, and it's, Liam Sharp's done a fantastic job. He's done his homework, shall we say?
Yes. I wish I'd been on that road trip.
Yeah, how good. So there you go. Well and truly recommended. You got these in store, haven't you? Hardback too. Beautiful. Starhenge, book one, The Dragon and the Boar.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is superb. Definitely grab it. Highly, highly recommended. So, well done. You survived your first pod.
Number one. Thanks, Ricardo.
If Stu allows us, we'll be back again before he gets back from his Comic Hub sojourn.